Right, so the brutal attack on a dance class in Southport back in July of last year reached its culmination this week with the conviction of Axel Rudakubana, who pleaded guilty yesterday to instigating a course of events that appalled a nation. The guilty plea will come as small comfort to the families of those affected. The grief will still be raw. The anger that this was allowed to happen when Rudakubana was known to various services and agencies will no doubt drive wider anger in the Southport area, on top of the grief and shock that community will naturally still be feeling. And that is completely justified, with massive questions now being asked of the Starmer government. For as much as events like this should not be politicised, however, that is unfortunately what Keir Starmer has done. Following an initial comment on Monday, following that guilty plea, Starmer decided to take to the podium in Downing Street today to pontificate to the nation about it. His initial reaction last July was markedly unwelcome in Southport. His intervention today has made matters even worse, with widespread calls for his resignation once again now being made. As sure as night follows day, it seems Keir Starmer will cause offence, but he's really done it this time. Right, so a guilty plea has been entered by the 18-year-old Axel Rudakubana for the killing of 3 little girls in a Southport dance class, a Taylor Swift-themed party as it was. The community was wrecked by such a display of abject and depraved violence in their midst as any community would be. An entire nation was up in arms, and sadly some had to take such matters into their own hands as misleading information at the time about the identity of the perpetrator quickly spread across social media. Where such disgusting individuals quickly made out that the attacker was a Muslim who arrived by small boat as an asylum seeker in 2023, it soon emerged that this was absolute nonsense. It was made up. Only far-right sociopaths would dream of inventing such a story, and furthermore share it around, propagating the lies, especially when the likes of Lawrence Fox or Andrew Tate were amongst them. Big accounts causing a lot of damage and harm as they did. Announcing the identity of the guy, made up as that was, despite retaining the information that they were only 17, should have been a red flag, since anyone accused of a crime under the age of 18 in this country has their identity kept confidential. But I suppose when you're in the likes of the English Defence League, who were accused of being behind all the damage caused there, especially the attack on a hotel nearby housing asylum seekers, the wrecking of the streets, the genuine article now having had a target painted on them by petty racists, while also throwing bricks and torching ambulances in the wake of a vigil held for those deceased children. Truly patriotic actions. Not. They fulfilled their racist aims, all off the back of grieving families and a community turned upside down. Gutter feeders and bottom dwellers, as every single one of them are. Exceptions where it comes to naming guilty parties, however, can be made, though, and it soon emerged that the perpetrator was Axel Rudakubana, who was not an asylum seeker and had not come here by small boat, is not Muslim either, but is in fact Christian and was born in South Wales and is of Rwandan descent. Rwanda, incidentally, being a country where some 93% of the populace is Christian, just as an FYI for the knuckle draggers out there. Keir Starmer's name is already mud in Southport, though. In the wake of the attack, he showed up to pay his respects, didn't he, and lay a wreath. It's what politicians do, isn't it? Wasn't exactly welcome, though, was he? Heckled as he absolutely was. Wouldn't speak to anybody at all while he was there. And given his own rhetoric concerning asylum seekers and migrants, deservedly so at that, by those wishing to hold him accountable for those reasons. He was asked what he would do to fix this. He was jeered for making a photo op out of a tragedy. He didn't address people's concerns there. He just walked away. Now he's doing it again. Shameless as he through and through is, he announced a big speech on the matter, which was held this morning, where he's managed to push the buttons of a nation all over again. Following a display of gushing sympathy, naming the 3 little girls as he did so on television, something he couldn't do to the faces of angry and grief-stricken Southport residents back in July of last year, he announced there were difficult questions to answer and that the inquiry launched into the failures that allowed Axel Rudakubana to do what he did was going to happen. So you can launch an inquiry into the events which led to 3 children being murdered, but when it comes to a national inquiry on safeguarding of children from the other week, you couldn't do that. I mean, sure, as I said at the time, enough inquiries have been done already onto on such matters. You could always just act on the recommendations of the last one, for example, instead of just wasting more public cash on another. But here there's public cash to spend, it seems. How about the cash lost to the organisations and agencies which are going to be the reason, at least in part, for this failure? How about the PREVENT programme, for one? It's a racist endeavour in and of itself. It is top-down diktat from the government, supposedly to keep the country safe, but has too much of an obsession with Muslim communities. The effect it has had on said communities is to end up dividing them by religious segregation as well as gender segregation. And in 2 decades of being around, a Blairite failure as it is, it has failed to keep the country safe. It has failed to stop people being radicalised in communities. It has suppressed names. It has become synonymous with the modern-day interpretation of the new no blacks, no Irish, no dogs mentality. And as filmmaker and Samosa Media co-founder Anwar Akhtar has said in light of a film he had made on the PREVENT programme, racism in Britain has been given a green light to recircuit itself and converging on Muslims. It's okay to hate Muslims. Everyone can join in the Muslim-hating bandwagon, and some of it is linked to the PREVENT programme. Those overseeing that programme are not unbiased themselves, and therefore when you consider that Rudakubana had been referred to PREVENT 3 times in his early teens, when he was 13 and 14 years of age, that failure of PREVENT is absolute here. But it's a Labour right devoted to programme, so will any questions be asked of them? Because they need to be. It's fair enough Keir Starmer did actually bring PREVENT up, but how far would he go? Besides PREVENT, Rudakubana had contact with the police, the youth justice system, social services, mental health services. All had failed, in part here, it is said in the media, to identify the danger he posed to society. But given the services aside from PREVENT he was involved with, this is also a sign of the failure of our community support systems, isn't it? What were his youth issues? What were his mental health issues? Evidently he had them if he was known to these agencies. Why were they not able to help him then? And then you consider when he was going through this early teens, middle of the Tory administration, austerity cuts. Anyone who's tried to engage with any community service these days knows they are not what they used to be. And it is the lack of funding and support that leads us here. And as much as I will not excuse what Rudakubana did whatsoever, I won't excuse failures of those services which have been run into the ground, which may have led to, or at least in part, led to his later actions. Government policy is almost certainly to blame as well. And honestly, if you just consider these issues on their own, it's common sense, isn't it? It's obvious that cuts to services don't improve them. And we've had years of it. And nothing Starmer is doing here is changing that with just another inquiry, just another waste of public money, when the results from it, the findings of it, inordinately or indefinitely don't end up being acted upon. Starmer's speech was an attempt fundamentally to talk up the need for justice and accountability, to cheer the guilty plead and demand answers for why this happened. It was another photo op. But the trouble is, Keir Starmer himself exemplifies these failures. He now claims that this could be a new form of terrorist attack, when the evidence on the face of it is one of failure by those same underfunded services, though where he mentions PREVENT, he doesn't mention failing social care. This is not in any way, I'll reiterate, excusing what Rudakubana did, but it has to be considered a factor leading up to them. And if Starmer is going to play the terrorist card, then these agencies need financial restoration and support to get them back on their feet to stop it happening again. Where an apparent £600 million is going into social care according to Reeves's budget, that and then some is being lost through tax and national insurance hikes because so many social care providers are now privatised interests, private businesses. So it's all very well Starmer talking this up, but back it with the cash injections that will actually make a difference. When talking of terrorist groups, Starmer brought up Al-Qaeda, now actually running the government in Syria as they are under the guise of HTS, which have British support. Make your mind up, Starmer. Are you with them or against them here? There was the blaming of access to dangerous materials online, and then there was the talk of changing the law and reviewing counter-extremism, and we reached the crux of the matter of what he actually wants to do, which is that this inquiry is going to be used as a blunt tool for censorship. He shut down blame on himself, which is unsurprising because nothing is ever his fault and he never ever says sorry. He praised the work of the Crown Prosecution Service, but at the time he was working there. He talks of an era of renewal, but what is functionally changing to help people as opposed to just clamping down on them and people watching the speech? Well, They certainly did pick up on that. And if he was truly serious about this, he might have mentioned of a certain salute made by Elon Musk after Trump's inauguration yesterday. Too chickened to have a pop back at a guy who was threatened to throw as much money as it takes at the UK political system to bring you down, Keith. And perhaps he's realised he doesn't need to spend a penny to do that. You're doing it quite well enough on your own for free. The comments in response to Starmer's speech have a running theme. People have clearly felt lied to here, that there is a cover-up by Starmer and that he needs to go. That so many appear to be from the far right implies a certain fear that he might be coming for them, and frankly, good on that score. So many of you have got it coming. But it's the other freedoms he looks set on curtailing that are eliciting just as many complaints. Fear of more censorship, especially online. More control freakery, all things Starmer has become known for. There are legitimate issues to address here. The legacy of these little girls should be that it never happens again, by ensuring no more victims and no more failures in the care system as one part of it. If you're going to name them, Starmer, you should make sure of that at least. But we all know you won't. You'll use this for your own advantage. You'll use this to launch a culture war, to clamp down on freedom of speech and freedom of expression. I have no doubt your inquiry will highlight these as failings, an inquiry you're launching because you were too craven and cowardly to launch one over child grooming, or indeed act upon the findings of any previous inquiry therein. And I have no doubt that on those recommendations found this time to curtail our rights, though, well, you'll act on those in a heartbeat. We know what your version of dealing with issues is, and that is to just crush dissent. You've done it in your own party. Now even your own MPs aren't safe from being called in for questioning under police caution for taking part in a peace march and laying flowers as happened following the Gaza March in London on Saturday. Get all the details of the fallout from that for Starmer in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe to the channel so as to ensure you don't miss out on new daily content. It all helps support the channel as well, which is very much appreciated. New content dropping daily, of course. And I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.